need to know, what is your plan? What is your 3-year plan for this?
Right.
You know, what kind of fertilizer are you going to be putting on here? And are you going to come out and do the grid sample, or do I need to provide the grid sample and all that?
Are you going to take care of the farm?
Howdy folks, Jason Wallingford here with Trophy Properties and Auction. Today I'm back up here in Lewis County, Missouri, just outside of Monticello. Casebier Ag, Michael Casebier, and here my good pal, Zach Nixon, seed specialist with Becks Hybrid. Zach, what are we going to do here today?
Appreciate you guys coming back. I really appreciate Michael Casebier and Casebier Ag allowing us to film here again today. Kind of some things we want to talk about. We want to talk about harvest. We want to talk about the decisions need to be made after that. You talk about marketing your grain. We're going to talk about fertilizer recommendations and making plans for the next year.
Absolutely. Yep. I know we were here about 6 weeks ago. Fodder's really changed color. Yeah. We've had an excellent harvest season. I mean, you can't ask for a better one. And yeah, honestly, we need some rain.
It's dry. It's very dry. I don't remember seeing corn dry down this quick in several years. So it's really ramped up on these guys. Corn went from anywhere from 24-25% down to 18, 17, 16 in a hurry. Yeah. And actually, the corn's kind of going the opposite way now. It's getting too dry. We're getting to a point where guys are shelling corn at 12, 11%, and at the end of the day, that's weight. That's weight in the trucks. And
I took a load down. It was 10.6.
Right.
And I had a load of beans that was 8.6.
That hurts.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was like, man, we need some moisture.
Right. So, and we did get a nice rain there last week. Got an inch up home up there around your dad's place, and that rain is important as we start thinking about fall tillage and we start thinking about anhydrous needing to go in the ground. We got to have moisture. So
that's for sure. The implement will go into the ground a lot better with a little moisture.
Yes, it will. It's hard as a rock right now.
So I think when we were out here, like I said, 6 weeks ago, some of the yields we were projecting was what, 240?
Yep.
So how are things shaking out? Were we pretty close?
We were. I think when we do yield checks, we talked about being conservative.
Yeah.
You never want to overshoot yourself, but we were definitely conservative on a lot of it.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of 265 averages coming around right out of here. I know the field down here to the south did about 264, and that was across 80, 100 acres.
Really?
So, yeah, 80 to 100.
That's just excellent. Unheard of, really.
Yeah, the
and
yields.
It's dry ground, right?
Right. No irrigation,
no
no pivot. This is just good, rolling plains dirt, right?
Yeah.
And so we had a great year. The crop really never. Well, there was about a 2-week stretch there where the crop struggled for rain, but other than that, right here in northeast Missouri, it was pretty good. As we moved south down into South Lewis County, northern Marion, down into northern Shelby, Knox, there was a few places that could have used another rain.
Yeah.
July.
Probably affected the beans more so than the corn?
Yes, the beans have been very spotty. They've been kind of, the yields are jumping around a lot on us. But other than that, the corn has just been phenomenal. Up in Scotland County, it's record numbers.
Really?
Numbers that I was talking to an old farmer the other day. He said, "Zach, I'll never see yields like this again in my lifetime." And it's been.
I would imagine there's a lot of folks saying that same thing.
It's been incredible.
Yep. Well, let's walk back down here and check out this test plot and see how the fodder changed and the corn, how it dented and finished out.
Absolutely.
Sounds good?
Yep.
This is the number we were at in 6 weeks ago when we went down and kind of checked it out.
Yeah, 115-day product. So when we talked about maturity before, that is the relative maturity of that product as far as dry down and things like that. You kind of see here something that played a big role in the dry down, at least in my opinion, was the tar spot.
Yeah.
That's the disease we kind of talked about. It's big in Illinois. It's making its way over here. You notice here the tar spot on these leaves, and the good thing about it is it came late enough that it didn't really hurt our yield, but it accelerated dry down.
Yeah.
So it's going to go ahead and stress that plant out enough to go ahead and decide the plant's done for the year, and dry down started. So this is kind of our lead product. This is something that a number that we're going to try to get on every farm next year. Just an absolute rock star for us. And you kind of see how it dried down.
Oh, yeah.
Put a good dent on it. It's still pretty heavy year though. It's going to have pretty good test weight. And that was another thing with all the weather we had. We saw a lot of test weights in the 60s this
Really?
year. A lot of 61, 62 pound corn. So,
What kind of test weight do you guys shoot for, or would like to see?
if I really like to be right around 60.
60?
Yeah, guys, you know, with the way the hybrids are moving these days, a lot of farmers don't want to see 56, 57 pound corn anymore. You know,
No.
it's kind of industry standard anymore to be up 59 to 61. And different genetic backgrounds can affect that too.
Yeah.
And so, really, test weight, that's a big, this time of year, I get a lot of questions. Well, my test weight's heavier, I got more yield. Well, if you get on any ag talk, there's a big disagreement on test weight versus yield. But
So we were talking earlier a little bit about the fertilizer and replacement
Right.
and all that. So with these bunker yields, 301 and 80 bushel beans and all that, how much fertilizer is going to need to go back onto the field to replace everything that they lost?
right, it's very
And
important.
I shouldn't say loss.
Right, pulled out.
Pulled out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
at the end of the day, you're taking a lot of NP and K, or P and K to the bin.
Yes.
In that kernel. So what we've got to do is a lot. If you go to any of your local co-ops, they're going to have a slider sheet, okay, where you just kind of look at it and you say, okay, I had 250 bushel corn, and it'll tell you how much P and K you need to put back on.
Yep.
And something that's interesting is the industry is kind of moving away on the nitrogen side. It used to be 1-to-1, 1 pound of nitrogen for 1 bushel of corn, right?
Okay.
Really what we found this year is it was more like 0.8,
0.8.
0.85. So 0.85 pounds of nitrogen to get a bushel of corn. And so I think you could credit that to the year we had. We had a lot of rain.
Yep.
But we also have the hybrids that are coming out now, a little bit more nitrogen efficient and things like that. But it's very important to replace the P and K that this crop is taking out to continue to build your soil up. And that brings up another point. As you drive by, you'll see some guys that might be baling some corn stalks,
Yep.
baling
Yep.
some fodder up,
Yep.
right, for bedding and things like that. Sometimes they even feed it. That's great and all, but we've got to think about the organic matter that we're putting back in the soil and try to replace that with something because, yeah, it is another income source, right? We're sometimes able to sell those bales off that farm.
Yep.
But as a landowner, I want to know that I'm putting organic matter back into that soil in either manure or something like that. Cover
So
crops.
when you bale that fodder off, how much do you think we're losing right there?
There's an argument. Everybody's going to argue. All the retail guys are going to argue that you're pulling off a lot, but there is P and K, so there's still potassium and phosphorus in those stalks. Okay,
Yep.
and as they break down, they release that back into the soil, and so there's definitely a value in that as you're pulling that off there. Not only organic matter, but you're also losing P and K that's still in that stalk.
Yep.
And
It's funny you brought that up because we sold a farm out in Kansas and probably about 5 weeks ago, and it's going to close this week. Well, the tenant had tenant rights through closing. He shelled his corn, which, that's his. Well, last week he went out and baled all the fodder off, and the buyer he's not very happy. He said, that's mine. I'm like, well, he still has tenant rights.
Right.
And that's his crop all the way up through closing.
right.
And, it was a tough discussion to have with the buyer, but also, that's the tenant paid for that.
Right.
So he's getting out what he wants. He needs that for, for the cattle.
And that's very important when you start thinking about who's going to be your next renter. And as you buy a farm and what is that renter going to do for my ground? Not only, yeah, you want him to farm it and you want him to make money because if everybody needs to make some money.
Yep.
But how are we giving back to this farm? Are we going to be taking corn stalk bales off? What are we replacing with that?
Yep.
There's a lot of, and as you see cash rents go up, you're going to see fertilizer applications go down. You're also going to see more corn stalk bales come off because that's another income source. So.
Yep.
You really got to play the devil's advocate there on, okay, I'd like $250 cash rent here in Northeast Missouri.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty good.
Yep.
But I also want to have a farm that is well taken care of. And so
So have you really checked into fertilizer costs? What are we seeing right now on the cost on that?
yeah, so a lot of, the dry fertilizer side, anhydrous is pretty, if you talk to the farmers, they're going to say it's high, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Last time I know I got mine for I think $6.55 up here in Northeast Missouri on anhydrous.
$6.55 for our viewers.
Per ton.
Per ton.
And so if you think about anhydrous, it's 82% nitrogen. So every 2,000 pounds, you're getting 1,640 pounds of nitrogen. So really the way to take those prices, you need to divide it out by pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm paying somewhere around 38 cents a pound for the nitrogen.
For the gas.
And so dry is I haven't got a dry price recently. I usually go up there to Northeast Missouri, up there in Cahokia, and get my dry prices. If I had to guess, I would say they're probably elevated right now because you know, we had the strike there with the ports.
Yep.
That played a little bit of a role in it, but also kind of where we're getting it. We're getting a lot of our dry. I think there's a one in Florida with all the hurricane damage. You know, that's slowing everything down, and it seems like there's always a reason, right, that they go up.
Yep, for sure.
But
there's never a reason to go down, though.
No, there's not. Sure would be nice. But,
yep, for sure. So, just ballparking, what do you think it's going to cost per acre to build the soil back to where
to
we
get
need
back
it
to where we are?
Not counting nitrogen, anhydrous.
Right, because nitrogen alone, I mean, you're going to have, you know, to raise what we just raised, and that's, nitrogen's a little bit different because it leaches, we get rid of it. The P and K can more or less stay in your soil a lot easier than their nitrogen. But I would say if you're not spending at least $150 an acre on dry fertilizer, you probably need to talk to your local agronomist and say, hey, am I short, right? And because you think about it, we pulled a record crop off this field.
Yep.
And so to put that all back, and I think, you know, 125, 150 bucks would probably be a safe shot. That'd be a good shot. That'd be to keep building your farm, right?
It almost sounds like that'd be on the low end.
Right. That's honestly just, let's raise another crop like this. That's what we need to put down.
Yep.
There's also some guys that are doing liquid P and K too with their planters. And so it all depends what system you're using. I really like the liquid P and K on your planters. It's hard to get a good build out of it. But as far as raising the next crop, it's there.
Yeah.
The P and K is there, but it's hard to build because you're just putting on so much volume to get that build going. But I'd say 120, 150 bucks is probably what you're going to spend on P and K this year, and that's without running prices. I probably need to go get some prices.
So then on anhydrous, when you start putting that on per acre, and we're talking about so much per ton.
Yep.
So what are you thinking on per acre for anhydrous?
So the numbers I ran, I do a split shot, and that's what a lot of guys are moving to. The studies have shown that split shot nitrogen applications seems to be the most effective. And so
now, just real quick, split shot, what are you talking about?
Okay, so more than one application, right?
Okay.
So we need to, if you're going to put it on in the fall, what a lot of guys are doing is, let's say 120 to 140 pounds of actual product, okay? That's actual nitrogen poundage. They're putting that on in the fall. They're going to probably stick an in-serve product with it, or I'm trying to think of the different names. There's nitrogen stabilizers is what they are, and that keeps the nitrogen from breaking down and then leaching into the soil.
Okay.
And so they're going to put that on in the fall. They're going to come back in the spring, probably put a starter fertilizer on with their planter.
Yeah.
And then they're also going to come back and side dress.
Yep.
That's more passes across the field, but what we're learning is that if you can spread your nitrogen applications out and make it more readily available right now for that crop,
better results.
Better results.
Yeah, I mean, I see guys go out here and knife on that anhydrous in the fall, and you see gas coming out right behind it. And,
right.
And then, you know, you just have all winter, you know, with the moisture and the thawing and freezing. I mean, how much are we losing there?
And you brought up a good point there when we talked about rain earlier and how we did get an inch back home there last week. But if we don't have enough moisture in the ground's not going to be able to seal back up. It's just too dry, too flaky. We can't get the anhydrous knives into the ground. It also, temperature is a big deal. So we've got to be under 51 degrees on soil temp before we can start putting in anhydrous into the ground. Otherwise, you're just going to lose it.
Yep.
And so it's kind of an important time. We're getting close enough now. It's kind of chilly this morning. We're getting some colder nights. Ground temp, we need a little bit of moisture, but we're going to start seeing anhydrous go on here in the next couple weeks.
And I understand guys are getting bigger and bigger and more acres. You know, you only have so much time. You got to get across it and you got to get going. But, you know, with the prices being so darn high, when you're going down through there and you can see a cloud of smoke,
right,
or you get to see some of it coming up out of the ground, I mean, it's just like, wow.
it hurts. It hurts to see, and
it hurts me, and it's not even mine.
Right,
Holy smoke.
right. We've got to be more efficient. You know, like you said, as we're covering more acres, and efficiency is huge, as well as, hey, one of my dealers up in Memphis, Richard Good, made a great comment. He says, Zach, if we're not going across this field efficiently and trying to make the best pass we can, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
We're just spinning our wheels. We've got to know that every time we go across that field, we're doing our best, because otherwise you're wasting your time.
Yep.
And so that's something to think about as you look back and you've got a line plugged, or you've got one that's blowing smoke out of the ground. Let's stop and see what's going on.
Yep.
How do we, how do we as a company help guys out? You know, Sonny Beck, you know, he said it from, you know, ever since he started, we're trying to help farmers succeed. And I think it's important that we start looking into kind of what we do as a company, family owned. We're not owned by Wall Street. And so we take our profits and we actually pump them back into the farmers as far as equipment and things like that with our commitment rewards program. And so you talk about rising prices of everything, you know, semis, tractors, hopper bottom trailers, side-by-sides, whatever it is, everything's inflated very heavily. So what we do as a company is we actually thank our farmers for buying seed from us, and we hand back a hopper bottom trailer. That's 55 grand or 50 grand.
I see you posting stuff on Facebook, you know, rewards.
Right.
Going back to, you know, a side-by-side and all sorts of different things. You know, fuel tanks, I believe. And,
right.
Yep.
And that's not just a push for Becks, but what I guess more or less what I'm trying to say is there's competition out here. As a farmer has the ability to make people compete for his business. And in this time with tight prices and you know, with margins as tight as they are, the farmer's got to be able to go out and play a little hardball.
Yeah.
And make guys compete for his business. The service is a big thing. Who's going to offer me service? It's kind of something of the past. Service is something that gets thrown. That's the first thing that gets thrown out. And so if you can find someone that's going to service you, he's going to give you a competitive price. He's going to give you a product that performs. And then on the backside, you're going to get a, you know, like, hey, here's a hopper bottom trailer or something. You know, it just depends. That's what the farmers are looking for. They're looking for competitiveness inside of the ag industry, I guess. And really, I mean, if you find a good landlord, you'll notice you'll see some farmers going around brush hogging field edges and keeping a farm clean. Because if they find a good landlord that cares about their bottom dollar too, as a farmer, they're going to keep them. And so just to having a good relationship, landlord to farmer relationship, we're going to need more share crop. If we can get, I know it's going the other way, we're getting more cash rent, less share crop. But if we could do more share crop to really help take some risk out of these farmers' hands, that's gonna help mitigate some of that, some of those losses for those farmers. Because at the end of the day, we got to have farmers. We got to have food.
So, you know, we were talking about, you know, just getting out and putting on anhydrous in the fall and stuff, because some of these guys are getting so big, they need to get out and get after it right away.
Right.
How big is too big?
Well,
because I mean, there's a lot of young guys and gals out there that want to farm.
Right.
But if their grandpa or great grandpa wasn't farming and kept it all rolling, there's no way for that new person to get out there and farm today.
Right.
There's just no way.
Unfortunately,
the county that we're from, you know, there'll be a day where 4 or 5 people or families are going to farm the whole county.
Right.
And is that a good situation?
It's not.
I agree.
It's not.
I agree.
You know, in my opinion, how much is enough? Can you successfully raise your family? And can you give them what they need? It seems like the lifestyle we all live anymore is more and more and more, right? And if you're not going for more, you're going to get swallowed up. And that's the hard part. Is you hear the term, if you're not growing, you're dying. That's pretty true. In a lot of things, but I hate to see that as far as the family farms that are getting swallowed up, and unfortunately, we're in a marketplace where you got to keep growing.
So, you know, labor force, you know, if you're going to be farming all those acres, you know, I'm sitting up there in the line ready to dump a load of corn or dump a load of beans. You see 5 semis come through with all the same name on them. That means you got 5 employees right there just to drive a semi, and that's not running combines and auger wagons and everything else. So when you start running low on those guys and gals that can drive your trucks, then what's going to happen? Well, because labor force is a big deal not
Huge.
just in farming, but in really everything.
Huge.
You see some of these restaurants closing their doors and for good because, well, we have no one that'll work.
Right.
You know, and people are taking off 3 or 4 days a week because, well, I need that time off because I can't get anyone else to work.
Right.
So it's going to filter down into the ag world as well, because a lot of these guys that I see driving these semis are retired people.
Right.
And they're just doing it for a couple
Something
months.
to do.
Exactly. Get out of the house.
But what we're seeing though is that as workers are needed, right, in these fields to work for some of these farms, the less workers you have, the harder you got to work those guys. And we're starting to see some accidents on the road. We're starting to see some guys really running themselves down.
Salt right up there in Clark County.
Right.
Gentleman passed. I know one passed away. I don't know
Yeah.
about the other one. It was a bad deal.
It is, and we've seen some in Memphis. We've seen them down. I mean, it's just, and you start seeing combines burn up. I know that's not necessarily from being tired, but
Yeah.
as we get tired and as guys put more and more hours in the field, some things get missed, and
Yep.
and we start looking for those little things, you know.
Yep.
And,
So we're talking about labor shortage and all that. So that's where autonomous comes in.
right.
So how, is that a good thing?
I don't like autonomous, but
I mean, hell, we
you
could go
can't
to
be
bed.
afraid of change, right?
Well, yeah, I understand. But we can go to bed tonight, wake up in the morning, and that field's all worked.
Yeah, we're not. I don't want to get into that because I think we'll start seeing some glitches, and all of a sudden the tractor's sitting in the road and
Yep.
somebody hits it at 10
Oh,
o'clock
yeah.
at night. And
Yep.
but there are some benefits to autonomous. You think about, as we have a shortage of workers, let's make the day easier on them. Let's give them auto steer.
Yeah.
Let's make it a little bit easier for them to run that machinery. And so there are benefits, absolutely. I think some of it is getting pretty crazy as we talk about self-driving tractors.
Oh,
and
yeah. You could get a self-driving tractor hooked onto the auger wagon.
Yep.
And you could make that work.
Yep.
You know,
and I've seen some videos where
Yeah.
it's tied to the combine, and
Yep.
they know exactly how far
they're
away to
talking,
be.
Yeah, they're talking
Yep.
to themselves, and it's crazy where.
And we can take this into a complete rabbit hole, but who's running all the infrastructure that runs? We can go down a
Exactly.
complete rabbit trail that might get
Yep.
a little conspiracy theorist, right?
Yep.
But, the more and more automatic that we get, the more vulnerable we are to someone hacking and
Yeah.
shutting that down. And so we're running out of people that know how to run equipment. We're running out of people that know how to run machinery and, can look at the land and tell you what's wrong with it. We're getting to a point where the computers are telling us that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary, but
Yeah. Another thing I can see happening, being a major problem, is having enough workforce to work on the equipment when we have a breakdown.
right.
I mean, let's get real. I mean, most of these machines now have computers in them, and
Yep.
it takes a certain person to be able to work on that equipment. So if you have a shortage out in the shop help, and you have 2 or 3 combines go down at the exact same time in different areas of the county, and we only have one person that can work on them,
Yep.
that's a major issue.
I've got a friend that was a tech for a local John Deere dealer, and he can tell you which tractors you need to buy, right? Which combines you need to buy because of the electronics in each one. And really, if you talk to any tech guy out there, a lot of them would rather have the stuff built around 2000 to 2005, right? That time frame where the computer wasn't running the whole machine.
Yeah.
Some of this new stuff out there, one little glitch can shut you down for a day, and then you're losing a day of production. So.
Yeah. Yep. But you start taking, you take a big combine with a 12-row head and a fleet of trucks to
Right.
keep the grain away from you. How many acres can they get across in a day?
Oh, there's guys doing somewhere around 100 anymore. Yeah,
100,
which is a big day.
Oh, heck yeah, it's a huge
know.
day. But if you lose 3 days,
Right.
combines down, you just 300 acres.
And then you look on the bean side of things where you don't have to have as many trucks, and they're running 2 combines with 45-foot draper heads, and you're talking about a lot of acres cut in one day.
Yep.
I had a guy tell me they did somewhere around 300 acres one day,
Yep.
which is unreal to think about.
Yeah.
And
I'd like to
so-
have been running the combine.
Right. That's
Because
just
those are
cooking.
long, long rows right there. No terraces, flat, good
Just
cutting.
let her rip.
So
shoot.
we've talked a lot here about these bunker yields. How's that affecting the grain storage and the elevators?
Yeah, it's been tight. Really, it was tight before it even started. I know there's some grain processing facilities down there around Highway 36, down around Macon County. And I heard from a lot of the local farmers that they were full before harvest even started. And so a lot of guys were holding grain back, waiting on prices. Well, then prices dropped, and so they're like, well, I'm going to keep holding. I've held this long.
Yep.
And so a lot of guys had crop from last year still in the bin.
Yep.
And so that kind of plugs up the channel, as well as low river levels. The Mississippi's low right now. I know if you go up to the Des Moines up there around, not far from your dad's place, you can walk across the river without getting knee deep. I mean, there's just not a lot of water to help. I've heard from several of the local co-ops, you know, that are loading these barges. They're having to load them half full, things like that.
And that costs money.
Absolutely.
Because you're sending a barge down, you know, with maybe, you're sending the boat down pushing barges with fewer number of barges on there.
Yep.
And then the ones you have on there, they're not full.
They're not full.
It's just, it's a bad situation. Exactly.
Right. Efficiency's down, so that plugs up the local elevators. They can only store as much as they can. I know I've seen a lot of elevators go to ground piles lately. Just to put it somewhere, which ground piles is fine. But that grain's still got to get somewhere. And so what it's done is it's really pumped up the basis. And when we talk about basis, it's pretty much how much the elevator's willing to pay under the Chicago Board of Trade, right? And so if Board of Trade's selling at, let's say, $4, and we put a 50-cent basis on it here at the local elevator, you're only going to get $3.50, even though it's selling for $4 on the market, right? The further you get from a port, the further you get from the processing facilities, the higher the basis. So you may go up into the Dakotas and it may be $1. Because they've got to get that grain to process somewhere. And so really what you see out in Kansas a lot, I know you guys sell some farms out there, the local market's driven by the cattle feeders, right? And the guys that are fattening out calves out there. And so they kind of keep their own market, which is nice. You know, that makes it nice for those farmers out there. Around here, our market is driven by the river. We take it, a lot of guys go to Keokuk. There's a place up there that processes corn. And really, that's where a lot of guys get a cattle feed from too.
Are there still a lot of guys here locally going to the ethanol plants?
Yep. So Poet's a big buyer of a lot of grain around here. Down in, they take it to, there's, I believe, one in Macon, Ladonia.
Well, the one in Ladonia, that's soybean, right? Or is that? I'm thinking that's soybean, but it could be corn.
It might be. You might be right. And see, really, where a lot of the soybeans go from guys in my territory, a lot of them go to Quincy, to ADM. That's where a lot of guys take their beans. The corn, you know, it really, Ursa Farmers Co-op, Bungie, they take a lot of corn. Poet down in Macon. I think you're right on that. I feel like the corn goes to Macon, the beans go to Ladonia, to the ethanol side of things.
You know, I also know some of these farmers out there, biodiesel.
Yeah, sorry.
But, you know, some of these farmers now, I'm starting to see you bag it. They're just putting these big white bags out there in the field and blowing the corn in there, and they'll come back and get it in the winter.
Yeah, so if you kind of look at the carry in the market as far as what they're paying right now at the local elevator compared to what they're going to pay in February or March or April, if you can find a place to put that grain and hang on to it, you can save your storage fee of 20. They're going to charge you 25 cents for DP,
and that's went up.
That
went up from last year. They're charging you more now to store it. And
right.
I think they also lowered down the percentage it has to be for them to store it.
Right.
Without docking you.
It's and that guys are getting frustrated on that, but really there's not much they can do. They're still charging around 3 cents, I think, a month to hold grain over. But if you,
I think it's 25 cents for the first 3 months, and then after that, it's an additional three points for.
Another 3 cents every month, and so that first 25 cents is what hurts. And what guys are learning is that, hey, if I can buy a bag for 8 cents instead of paying 25 cents at the elevator, they're just going to store it on the farm, and then they'll truck it out once prices go up, once everything levels out. Because see, with harvest, it's just a mad run of everybody's got so much grain they don't need it, and so basis points run high, and really the elevators don't want it. I mean, they're full. And so
you were talking about a lot of grain stored out there on the ground. That's just corn. No, we're not seeing soybeans out there. And the reason why?
Well, so we did, I guess there was one place, I did get a Snapchat the other day of some soybeans being put on the ground. And that's kind of risky. So the beans will actually swell up, and if they get any moisture on them at all, they'll swell up and rot. And so you don't see a whole lot of soybean ground piles, but there are a few. I did see a picture from somebody the other day. But you throw the corn on the ground, You put a tarp over it. They've got fans that they can blow in the sides and try to, you know, pull some moisture out, whatever, suck that tarp down. It's a pretty neat system.
Yep.
When you watch it.
I noticed our local one up here, you know, in Northeast Missouri, they filled up a lot quicker than they have in the past.
Yeah, it's
and there's still a lot of
full.
corn. Yeah, and there's a lot of corn out there yet to go.
Yeah, and I don't know how much that pile holds, but it is massive.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the fellow the other day, and he says, "Yeah, we'll be full here pretty quick," and they were full in no time. And so that just tells you what kind of crop we're having.
Yep.
But as far as the marketing side of things right now, it just seems like there's a lot going on with the world. There's a lot. You talk about overseas and all the problems going on over there. Well, that's where a lot of our crop goes.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not exporting and we don't have good relationships across seas, then it's going to make it hard for the American farmer. And so that's important. You know, heck, we're 2 weeks away from a very important day, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
less than 2 weeks.
Right. Well, I don't even know what.
8 days.
8 days. Yeah. So it's very important. You know, it's not just. There's so much that goes into international relations as far as what it does for the farmer. We've got to have good relationships across seas because that's where our crop goes.
Yep.
This corn is ready to go in the bin. It's dry enough now to where it's not going to rot in the bin. It can be stored properly, and it's ready for market. It's ready to sell. So
go right through.
Right through.
No
and
dot.
Really, it'll actually flow really well as dry as it is right now. You could probably break this in half and it's going to explode. You know, it's going to bust up. So it's very dry right now. Should shell easy. We don't have hardly any green in the stock. There is, on some of our later products, we are seeing some green down around the bottom, which is good. It just got good stay green, good plant health. It should stand well. And so those are the types of things we look for, because as we run it through the combine here, as Casebier Ag is going to run that corn through the combine, they don't want stalks laying down on top of themselves. They want it to go right in, because what's crazy is some people might know you don't actually cut the corn like you do on beans. You know, beans has a sickle bar and it cuts the beans off the ground. What we've got here is actually stripper rollers, and they grab the stalk and actually pull it down through the head. And then there's your stripper plates are right there up top, and that's what grabs the ear.
Takes that ear and just shoves it right on up through.
Right.
House.
So really, you don't want a ton of the stalk going into the head, which it still does, because I mean we're still moving pretty quick, 5 mile an hour or whatever.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's a little bit different process than cutting beans, but you guys are going to get to see the combine in action today, which is pretty cool.
Sounds like we're going to run up north here and shell a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to go right up here, and they're in some pretty good corn right now. It's making well into the 200s, and you guys will get to see 12 rows at a time. This is John Deere S Series combine. I think it's an S780, pretty good size combine, and really, you guys are going to get to see. Going to get to see it in action. So
it takes a big horse to pack 12 rows at a time.
Yeah, it does. You're talking about a lot of product.
There's a lot of grain rolling through that thing real quick.
Right. So we kind of talked about the corn head over there, kind of how it, stripper plates, and we talked about how it kind of strips the corn plant through and knocks the ear off. This is obviously a lot different. This is what we call a draper head. And so the draper head is, it was new to the market, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, something like that, 2012, somewhere around in there. But really what they did is they replaced the conventional auger head. There used to be an auger that ran across all the way, and they still have them. I mean,
they still have them.
Guys are still running them.
In fact, the corn head, if you notice, there was an auger up there. Once that corn is stripped, the cobs all come in there, and then the auger takes it down to the feeder house.
Yep, and that's so that same philosophy here, except it's using a mat, okay, and the draper actually pulls the corn in on a rubber mat all the way to another belt, and that belt takes it up into the feeder house. But what they're finding with the draper heads is that you can run anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half sooner in the day and later, because as the beans get wet, they get tough. You can't cut them. You can't get them to get into the feeder house. They get bunched up. They ball up right here in the corners. And so draper heads are kind of a huge turning point to farming, to give these guys another hour in the day each side.
Probably a little bit less shatter too, right?
Absolutely.
Hitting them bean stems, and beans are popping out and hitting the windshield. I mean, you can see some right there on the front. If you want to zoom in, you can kind of see, Zach was talking about earlier, you have your sickle down there at the bottom. When that combine's running through there, that sickle's taking them beans and cutting them off, and then beans just kind of fall right in there on top of that belt, and that belt brings everything down to the middle, and then it just goes right on up through.
Yep. And you made a good point about less shatter and things like that. A lot of the companies making draper heads, they were pushing that you'd get another 3 bushel to the acre out of a draper head because of those things. You know, if the beans are standing well, they just lay down flat, nice and easy. And so, yeah, you're losing less. You're not hitting them with the auger. This is a really important piece to this as well. When you talk about the reel, the way they've made these reels now is they can actually they can extend out, they can extend down. If beans are laying down, like this year we had a lot of beans go down. They just got tall and rank. And if you notice,
control the speed on it and everything.
Yep, you can control the speed, where you want to put it. And what's neat is those fingertips are, you know, those tines are almost touching the sickle. And so these heads have really come a long ways in the past 15 years to let these guys operate more efficiently. We talked about efficiency. We talked about being able to not overwork our guys that are in the field. With equipment like this, it makes the job a lot easier.
For sure. Yep, it sure has come a long ways.
Yes. But an old auger head's there's nothing wrong with an auger head. I've got a lot of guys with auger heads.
Yep.
But the draper just makes life easier. I've learned a lot from a farmer up in Cahokia, and he taught me, you know, you always look in that row on corn, you always look in the row right here that you haven't shelled yet, and look for kernels. And that's something that he's very adamant that we don't need to be throwing this corn back out on the ground, right?
Just getting it set right and then not running too fast.
Right.
Because you have to realize, if you're in 250 bushel corn, how many kernels are rolling through that combine?
Right.
So, I mean, if you're trying to run 5-6 miles per hour, the machine can only do so much.
Right.
And if it's not getting in the right spot, it's going out the back.
What's crazy is you can run it too slow too.
Yeah.
So there's a happy medium there where you've got to have the right amount of stock in there to make it thresh right, or, you know, thresh correctly, I guess you'd say. If you don't run enough in there, it'll actually throw it out the back. If you run too much in there, it'll throw it out the back. So really there's a happy medium in there, and there's plenty of monitors inside the combine that tell you, you know, what your work power is as far as how hard that machine's working. There's also some different capacity levels in there that tell you, hey, this thing's getting pretty full, we better back off. But you made a great point. We can't get in too big a hurry and just start ramming around, because we'll throw corn right out the back.
Yep. All right, folks, we're out here on the farm right now. The equipment's out there running, 12 rows at a time. Zach, what number of Becks hybrid is this?
Yeah, so this is 6574. Jeff's out there in the combine right now. They're taking out, like you said, 12 rows at a time, and I know the boys are probably having trouble keeping up with him there with the auger wagon. You know, you're talking about quite a bit in there, but these guys have they've had a long fall. You know, there hasn't been many rain days, so guys have just been working every day, not a lot of breaks, and so I know they're ready to be done.
Yep.
They said they got about 3 days left of harvest, and then we'll be moving in to start thinking about springtime stuff.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get a nice little shower to kind of help get some fall work done out there.
Right.
A little, you know, moisten the ground up a little bit. That dirt will work a little better.
Right.
So that looks like they got a big day here ahead of them. They got 4 semis sitting here ready to go.
Yep.
So we sure appreciate you having us back out here and going through harvest today. And we're going to stick around and get some footage and
awesome.
Get it all put together.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
Yep,
Hey, if you guys have any questions, just give us a call. Michael Casebier here at Casebier Ag, and check out Beck's Hybrids. Appreciate everything that Trophy PA does for us. So.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Zach.
Yep.
that's it. For all your real estate needs, ag, hunting, rec, whatever it may be, check us out at trophypa.com.